Outside the Box Reviews.
You'll take my life, but I'll take yours too. You fire musket, but I'll run you through.
We're looking at the NECA Retro Figure Collection, Iron Maiden The Trooper Eddie figure. And first and foremost, I've got to say right now that I'm starting to think I judged this line a little harshly overall. In every review I've done of these figures, since that first Ash one, I've talked about, well, I don't really like the line, I'm not really liking what's happening with it, I'd prefer the other figures. And yeah, I would still prefer the plain plastic figures, but the character selection they are hitting with this line is making me very, very happy, and they're hitting a lot of characters that are definitely a sweet spot for me. And Eddie from Iron Maiden is one of them. And unfortunately, some of the blame for them not doing Eddie in the normal plastic style anymore probably falls on my hands too, because I picked up the Killers version, but I never picked up the Iron Maiden version or the Final Frontier version, mostly because I just didn't like those designs nearly as much. And quite honestly, I don't remember if NECA ever did a version of Eddie in the Trooper costume in their normal Iron Maiden line. Doing a quick search, I found pictures of a bobblehead, but I think the normal action figure was actually done by McFarlane and not NECA, which kind of makes me even happier that NECA's finally getting around to this figure in their own scale, which actually really surprises me. I kind of thought they'd already touched this one, but maybe they haven't. But enough talking, let's rock on and check out this figure up close. Now, Eddie comes with two accessories. One is his tattered Union Jack flag. It's all torn up. The flagpole itself is very spear looking, has a very silver ornate top to it. You can see it's supposed to look like it's splintered off and broken here at the bottom, but a great paint job. And I honestly expected this would be fabric, but it's actually more of a vinyl-y rubberized plastic. So it's gonna always be outstretched and looking like this, which I guess at the end of the day is probably the right decision to go with. But it's very dirty. It's got a bunch of brown paint on it, making it look just nasty and worn, and obviously it's very torn up. Eddie also comes with his sword. I guess this is kind of a saber. It's got a golden hilt here, curved silver blade with a lot of blood all over it, looking very, very cool. And to get this in his hand, you actually are able to take off the little guard here on the hilt, slide it into his hand, and then repeg this around the hand just to allow it to keep that look without the hand being open. Eddie also has a hilt here on his side that the blade can go into, but once you put it in there, it really gets in the way of his arm, so it's kind of hard to have it like that. And let's face it, you're probably gonna have this blade in his hand. This isn't from a movie or something, this is from an album cover, and you're gonna try to replicate the album cover as much as possible. This is the thing most people are. As for the figure himself, I think NECA did a great job sculpting Eddie. I think they've always done a great job capturing the Derek Riggs artwork in their figures. It's not always an enviable task to take a 2D image and make it a 3D sculpture, but I think they did a good job here. See, he's got some very craggly looking teeth. You can see the tongue inside. There's a nice paint wash over the whole figure, getting very dark blacks and browns inside all the cracks on his head. Got the little bolt holding his head together after his autopsy, the blood trickling down over his jowls there, his white eyes in their deep sockets. Just overall very, very nice looking, very well painted. We can turn it around, we can see more detail on his ears, the cracks all through the top of his head. The only thing I find lacking is with some of the other figures, they've done a really good job painting down the neck and sculpting down the neck. Here they just painted it a similar yellowy brown to the rest of the head, but not having any sculpting going on there really just kind of looks weird. If you're looking at him from the front, it looks fine because his chin kind of covers everything up. You turn around to the side, it is a pretty abrupt, just kind of drop off here in his head. I do wonder if part of the reason they didn't sculpt more back there is so you could get his head looking a little more upwards, which it kind of goes into replicating that album art, but not exactly the best look for him overall. His shirt's pretty nice. It's very reminiscent of Ash's shirt, just the red button-up shirt here. The collar is a little oversized. It's always a problem with figures using cloth clothing, especially at the smaller scales, but even some 12-inch figures have issues there. It's got some nice buttons going on the front, a lot of great dirt and grime going on here on the jacket. He's got all the rubberized straps for his backpack here, a big bag on his side, all the little clasps. These aren't really painted, and I wish they they were. Definitely could use some additional paint detail on some of these little buckles here, but nothing horrible. Let me turn around. We got his backpack or whatever this is on his back. It's all tattered and torn and ripped up and very cool looking. We have his one sleeve that's shorter than the other, torn up almost to the elbow, so it's fully sculpted down to his wrist. And then his hand. This hand is for holding the saber and it's completely closed off. The other hand a little more open to hold the flag. You can see his sharp fingernails there. And this arm is also still sculpted, I believe, up to the elbow, which is kind of nice. We have his blue pants with the red stripe down the side. Major dirt going on with these. Of course, have his scabbard here on his side. We actually have a separate piece down here, cloth kind of going around his boot covers, which is a nice touch. I didn't really think they would do that. You look underneath, you could actually see it's sculpted onto the boot as well. So I think this was kind of designed to originally have been sculpted detail and then became fabric detail. And then his boots, they're pretty simple, but they do the job. Articulation is standard for one of these figures. He has a ball jointed head, so he can move up and down, side to side, rotate, all that good stuff. Pin socket shoulders, and go forward, back, out to the side. Single joint at the elbow, rotate and hinge at the wrist, rotate at the waist, move forward and back, as well as hinge in one direction at the upper leg, single jointed bend at the knee, and a hinge at the foot. The biggest downside to this articulation is that you cannot pose Eddie like he is on the album cover. On the album cover, he's got a very deep stance going on. He's bent over and kind of pulling his head up, and some of that is possible. You can move the head up pretty far, but without having a hinge or a ball joint in the torso, and without really especially having an upper thigh cut joint that you can move the leg around, you really cannot get that iconic album pose out of Eddie, which in the end is pretty disappointing, seeing as that's what this figure is. It's supposed to be replicating a single picture, not a movie, not a TV show, not anything else, a single piece of album artwork, and he can't do it. And because I'm a lousy Iron Maiden fan, I don't have a vinyl copy of the Trooper single. Here is the album the Trooper is off of, Peace of Mind. It is a figure that NECA has done, and I wouldn't mind getting this version of Eddie in this retro style either. But overall, you know, I'm gonna recommend this figure, and it's getting that same recommend that a lot of these figures are getting, just that you kind of know if this is something you want, if this is your cup of tea, this is something that's gonna appeal to you as a collector. I've gotten major mixed responses from people, some people who share my opinion that this is kind of a weird way to go with action figures, and this is something they don't want to see primarily coming from NECA. They want what we've gotten for years and years from them. And other people who really seem to be enjoying this kind of retro throwback line. And I could say I'm not enjoying the style of these so much, but I'm enjoying the character selection. So as long as NECA keeps picking cool characters that I want to see, I think I'm gonna still be on board with this line. This figure does get a recommendation, but the biggest hindrance is you cannot put him in that iconic pose from the album cover, and that is a major problem. So that is the biggest caveat on this. Yeah, I'm gonna recommend him, but if you want something that looks like the album cover in three-dimensional format, this isn't the figure for you because he can't do the pose. NECA has a Power Slave version of Eddie coming out fairly soon, I believe, which is basically a mummy version of Eddie, and I will definitely be picking that one up. Very excited to get that. And maybe we'll get lucky and this will continue on and we can get a lot more versions of Eddie that they couldn't give us in normal figure form. Make sure you check me out on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, it's been our Outside the Box Reviews.